It's a tough one. I'm a mom too. I think working moms primarily deal with shitload of guilt, right? Whether you're working, whether you're always feeling guilty about something that you're not doing. So I think first is you need to prioritize for yourself where you think work lies in your idea of how you want your world to be. There might be financial pressures and you can't stop working. I'm not advocating stop working. I'm just saying that it requires an enormous amount of being organized and prioritizing what is important to you. Secondly, if you think that you can be a perfect mom, I think that requires a lot of working through these negative belief systems about perfection and motherhood. No mother is perfect. No parent is perfect. Whether you're working or not, perfection is something that you cannot achieve and it is not possible. It's not a human condition, not in parenting. I find that most working moms are harboring under some delusion that they have to be perfect because society expects that of most working women. Or if you're working, then you better make sure that you're a perfect mom as well. And so I think most working women will drive themselves crazy trying to be it all. So I think to give up some of those notions and be realistic about good enough mothers, good enough. First of all, I think it's really important to have those boundaries. I mean, if there is no work-life balance, if there is no boundary between work and your personal life, then whatever you're experiencing is going to find it easier to spill over. So make those boundaries very clear. Try not to bring too much work home. And I know that nowadays work from home has created these terrible issues where there is no boundary. I think that's a really bad idea. Flexible working conditions, of course, are great, but not if it's creating a situation where you're working all the time, right? So the first issue is boundaries. The second is it's really important for you to connect to your relationships, because relationships are one of the most the most protective measures we have to have good mental health. It's a preventive measure. So good relationships, invest in your relationships, hang out with people who are positive, hang out with people who are going to be supportive of you. And thirdly, I think it's really important to have a sense of the rest of the world. You know, I think you guys might be getting so sucked into such a negative world that it's so hard for you to see that there is a world out there that is good, that is kind, that is honest, that is trustworthy. So I think it's important for you to connect in any way possible, whether it's by hanging out with children or hanging out with animals or volunteering or doing something where maybe reading great news. I don't know, by great news, I mean like news about positive things. You have to make a conscious effort to keep your mind also looking at those other things. I think it's terribly important to also get a sense of beauty in this world. And beauty can come in so many different forms. It can be beauty in the form of love. It can be beauty in the form of some positive movies or books or conversations. It can be even spirituality. So I think it's important to have some of these protective layers in place because you all are dealing with really the dark underbelly of the world. And this is a question you guys can answer for me. Is there any recognition or is there enough recognition that burnout is not an individual problem? Or are you being told that if you are burnt out, it's your fault?
Right.
I don't know if I don't know. I'm asking you guys because I'm no longer in, I was in the industry for a very short little brief blip in my life. Are organizations, are news organizations recognizing that burnout is also an institution industry problem? Right. And if it is an industry problem, if it is an institutional problem, then what is being done about it? Because if you guys are working on like 7 stories a day across multimedia, constantly the news cycle is, the breaking news cycle is 24 hours a day. And everyone might say, oh, but that's how the world is. Okay, that might be how the world is. But what can be done at an institutional level is something that management and leadership needs to actually acknowledge, saying, something's very wrong in our house. The roof is caving in, and we are all just carrying on as usual, holding an umbrella and hoping that no bricks are going to fall on your head. That I don't know if it's recognized, especially post-COVID, if anyone has actually taken a reality check on the mental health of journalists. I suspect it's taken a dive. So I think I had a slide on what workplace can do. I think some of those were really good suggestions. And I think we can go back to that slide once this talk is over, and maybe people can look at it. More trauma training for journalists, for instance. Making use of counseling services that you already have. Talking candidly about, without shame and stigma, about mental health issues. Having a cooling off period for journalists who have covered very traumatic stories. Building up informal peer support groups. So having little groups of people where people check in with each other every day and actually put aside a time where people can actually sit and talk about this. Not everyone is running around like chickens with their heads cut off, like constantly working on some story. So clear and consistent goals, making sure that there's no inhumane work hours happening. Optimizing workloads. I mean, there's so many things that I'm not a management guru, so I don't think I want to get into how to restructure work, and I don't know enough about the industry, but I think these are some of the things that come up for me. What's wrong with telling somebody, I think I can see that you are going through a tough time. I know tons of people who have been helped by going and talking to a professional about it. And I know that we have this service as part of our EAP. And if that doesn't work, I can find out about counseling services. What's wrong with saying that? I've been seeing a therapist for the last 10 years because my job is also stressful. And I think it's helped me tremendously. So I think the more people recognize that there is professional help available and it is useful and there's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't mean you're a weak person or you're a crazy person. It just means that you need some professional advice and professional help. So I think if we can all stop pretending to be Superman and Superwoman as a society, start with being real human beings, have as an individual, I think people in your team would find it easy to come and talk to you and not take offense at what you're saying. Because you yourself are saying, yeah, sure. I mean, there are days when I also find it hard. There are, I also feel very anxious, or my sister has depression and she sought help. We all know someone who goes to a counselor, right? Each and every one of us, we all know somebody. Normalize it. If a person is starting to have mental health issues and they are refusing to go for help, there's not much anyone can do. Maybe you can reach out to their family and let them know that there are very obvious signs cropping up at work as well. Maybe someone from management can go have a conversation, not in a punishing way, but in a supportive way, to say that we can see XYZ happening. I think you should take it seriously. I've always found it very useful when people call me and say, my sister or my daughter or my husband, I think he needs help, but he's refusing to go. I always say, you go first. You go to a counselor first to sort of show them that there's nothing wrong with it. You go and tell them, oh, this is what my session was like. This is what I found out. Do you want to come with me next time? No one's going to force you to do it. But try one session and see what harm will it do you. If you don't like it, don't do it. Try one session. And usually in that first session, hopefully they'll get a sense that, okay, this is not what I imagined it to be. This is so much more normal. And hopefully then they will stay in it. There is no correct process. You can start at anywhere. You can even start with your family doctor. You can even start with any doctor that you feel you trust. And, psychiatrist, if you feel that, oh my God, only mad people go to psychiatrists, which is an attitude that is still prevalent today. Maybe it's a softer, more acceptable for someone to go see a counselor first, because a counselor has sort of a slightly less scary aspect. So I think you can start anywhere, any professional, where you can go and say, I'm starting to experience all of these things. What do you think I can do about it? Who should I go talk to? And most doctors, most counselors will be able to talk to them and then evaluate, do they need medical help, or is this something that can be handled with counseling? I think first, it's really, really important to have real relationships in your life that occupy a significant part of your emotional landscape. If we are spending all our time on social media and thinking that we have all our friendships on social media, and I know that nowadays it's very important also to have a presence on social media, and that's part of your persona, part of who you are, part of who you want other people to see you as. But to not imagine that is the real life. Could be the real life, but it's not your real life. So I think we need to also step back and understand what is the reality of our actual relationships. Spend time with real people, with real relationships, conversations. It serves as a sort of a buffer from hearing nasty comments. And when someone says something terrible to you, if you have other people in your life who are saying, that's not like you at all, I don't think you should pay so much attention. You're a wonderful person. It makes a difference, right? When you have people telling you, hey, listen, I know that was really horrible and nasty, but, you're not like that. Also, I would advocate, avoid getting into like huge ideological or personal debates and fights on social media, because people are not there to listen unless you're in a special group, like you're in a private group on social media, which is specifically there for a certain purpose. I don't know, why are we trying to convince people on social media about anything? Then we have to examine ourselves and say, what is it that I'm trying to do? I don't have to convince anybody. If I believe in something, I believe in something. I have loved people around me who share some of my views, and that is my real world. I don't have to be on a mission to convince everybody that I am right. So I think if we are able to get off that sort of bandwagon and examine our own motivations and reasons for spending so much time and paying so much attention to people who are not in our lives in a real way, then we have to really examine. I think it requires us to take a step back and have some sort of insight into ourselves.